happiness. Not in another place, but this place. Not in another hour, but this hour.
Those are the words of American poet Walt Whitman. Yeah, that boy can drop some bars. And what he was saying was, I think, that true happiness can only ever be found here and now. Tomorrow never comes. The past lives only in our memories. All we have is now. And you know what? I think he was onto something.
Of course, casting off past regrets and future worries, living mindfully in the moment, is easier said than done. Some folks devote decades to prayer and meditation, hoping to achieve just a few moments of true mindfulness.
But I think I've found a quicker way to find happiness in this place, in this hour. In the Ferrari 12 Cilindri Spider.
So, what is the 12 Cilindri Spider? Well, in simple terms, it's the convertible version of Ferrari's new V12 flagship. It makes the same 830 horsepower and 638 Newton meters of torque from the same 6.5-litre naturally aspirated V12 engine. It'll do 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds and at least 211 miles an hour flat out.
But really, the 12 Cilindri, which I'm going to call the 12-cylinder from now on to spare you my Italian accent, is a lot more than that. What this is an 800 horsepower slice of noisy, green mindfulness.
The secret to living in the moment, they say, is not to think, but simply experience, to feel, absorb, to listen. And in the 12-cylinder Spider, you've got no choice. This is a car that throws a whole lot of experience at you, fast.
0 to 62, 2.9. 0 to 125, 8.2 seconds. That is very, very fast for a rear-wheel drive car. And that noise, do you hear that? That is outrageous. Oh! I will preface it by saying that modern Ferraris are a lot more quiet than they used to be. They've actually had to drop the decibel level by 2 compared to the previous car. But let me tell you something, you don't need maximum volume to appreciate a good tune. And this tune is a banger. It's a beautiful, glorious, orchestral symphony that crescendos at a ridiculous 9,500 RPM, bathing you in every color of noise all the way up to that magnificent red line. Woo! Oh, that is a drug. 9,500 RPM. Just think about that for a second. That's 150 revolutions every second. The sheer engineering and science and just brain power that would have to go into allowing this big V12 to spin at that rate just boggles the mind.
The Spider sounds far, and I mean far better than the 12-cylinder coupe. Perhaps it's the roof being down, perhaps it's the cleverly positioned resonators and modified intake tract. Whatever it is, the Spider makes the coupe redundant if you actually want to hear your V12.
Revving an engine to those sorts of RPMs, it just fills your brain right to the brim. It doesn't leave any space for thinking about your mortgage, your life insurance policy, maybe it should actually, or anything else. It just puts you in the moment. Sensational.
And the engine is just the start of this Ferrari's sensory overload. Everything about driving this car fast is intense. It puts your senses on high alert. For starters, the 12-cylinder feels huge. It's longer and wider than the old 812, which was pretty long and wide itself.
Keeping it on the road requires constant, total focus. Lose your train of thought for just 1 second and you could be scattered all over Portugal, even if you're not driving in Portugal in the first place. And part of that is down to the speed of the steering. It is hyper responsive, very typical of Ferrari, but maybe even more so. You've got to be on your A game with this one.
The 12-cylinder sits on a shorter wheelbase than the old 812, with Ferrari's brand new rear-wheel steering system effectively making it shorter still. Each rear wheel designed to turn independently towards its own lateral steering direction, while the other remains facing forward so it, in turn, can do the same in the opposite direction without having to swing large distances. This big beast is far more fleet-footed than you might expect.
It doesn't seem to keep up with your thoughts. It seems to be almost one step ahead. This isn't steering, this is more like teleporting from side to side.
The brakes, which offer monster stopping power, are controlled only by wire. No physical connections between the pedal and the actual pads and pistons.
And that doesn't really sound particularly mindful, does it? Ideally, you'd have a physical connection, especially with the thing that's keeping you from spearing your £366,000 Ferrari 12-cylinder into a wall. But I'll tell you a little story. There was a moment on track when I was driving the coupe version of this car and I thought, hang on, I braked way too late for this corner and was kind of crossing my fingers and toes. Didn't need to worry, the thing braked like you wouldn't believe. The brakes are fantastic. And the gearbox, nuts. 8-speed, rear-mounted, DCT, slapper of a thing. Do you remember the gearbox in the 812 Superfast and how fast that was? This is 30% quicker, which almost doesn't seem to make sense, but the way it shifts. Oh. It's lightning up and down the box. Oh my goodness. You're almost changing gears for fun because it's I'm lost for words about this gearbox, honestly. It almost lets you, in conjunction with the pedal, play the engine like an instrument. And there's so much going on. You've got the low baritone from the exhaust, and as you rise through the revs, some soprano, and as you get all the way up into the red line, there's that tenor. Oh, and then percussion with each gear change.
It has a new final drive that increases torque by 12%, and this is the first naturally aspirated engine to use software to change the shape of the torque, specifically in third and fourth, where it flattens the torque curve to give a more progressive feel through the rev range.
And then of course there's the traditional Ferrari Manettino on the steering wheel, which controls the amount of wheel slip you get. Does a really good job considering this car is 830 horsepower. You wouldn't believe it when you floor it, because it just digs in and takes off. But of course, if you take it out of I need some help mode, well yeah, good luck with that. It's very playful.
The 12-cylinder's driving experience is visceral, all-consuming. This is a car that forces you to focus on the here and now, or suffer the consequences. So, if true happiness is all about existing in the present, not being consumed by past or future, where does that leave the 12-cylinder Spider itself? Well, it's a car that does carry the weight of history on its shoulders. The story of Ferrari is the story of the V12 Grand Tourer. The very first Ferrari road car in 1947 was an open-top 12-cylinder front-engined GT. If any car was in danger of drowning in its past, it's this one. And yet, Ferrari's been very brave with its design choices with the 12-cylinder. The black nose pays tribute to the Daytona in the same way it does on the coupe. But this being the Spider, there are, of course, major changes in the middle and at the rear. The car uses a metal retractable hardtop, which opens and closes in 14 seconds and at speeds of up to 28 miles an hour. The buttresses at the rear give it a bold, arguably more interesting look than the coupe, with clever aerodynamic touches including passages on the B-pillar that channel air through and over the buttresses in order to reduce wind noise, along with the signature active aero flaps that provide downforce.
I'll admit I wasn't a big fan of the 12 Cilindri in coupe form when I first saw it, especially in pictures. It looks better in person, but Ferrari deliberately made what they call a bewildering car. They wanted people to spend time with it and get used to it and eventually come around to loving it. And that's exactly what's happened to me. It still has all the presence you'd expect from a front-engine V12 Ferrari, but trades some of the muscularity and the aggression of something like an 812 Superfast for something that's a bit more modern, a bit more classy, I think, in Spider form, This is a fantastic looking car. So where was I? Oh yeah, being mindful.
Because the 12-cylinder is, don't forget, a GT car, a machine that should allow you to enjoy breakfast in London and dinner in Lisbon.
And when you're relaxing, the 12-cylinder is also relaxing with the roof up. And I'm not going to demonstrate that because it's a glorious day here in Portugal. It's an incredibly refined car. In fact, you wouldn't even think you were in a convertible at all. It feels like a coupe with the roof up. It's quiet, the chassis doesn't wiggle around, the ride is very good. This is an excellent daily car despite the amount of horsepower it has. The interior is actually okay as well. I mean, maybe it's not £366,000 okay, but it's actually decent and makes you feel nice, especially when you've got the roof down. I really love these digital screens in front of you. I've also got an infotainment screen with wireless Apple CarPlay, a third screen for your passenger for showing off things like your rev counter and your speed, helping them feel more like they're part of the experience. And the general quality in this car is actually not bad.
But when it comes to delivering universal happiness, I will concede the 12-cylinder suffers a few flaws.
For starters, it's quite pricey, £366,000, which puts it out of the reach of most people, I would say, as a mindfulness solution. You could buy a lot of yoga mats for that. But stepping out of my mindfulness bubble for a second, there are a few issues that I don't think should go completely unnoticed. For a start, the stereo, not that good really, 1600 watts. I think it's like 15 or 16 separate speakers, including one down here between you and your passenger. Still doesn't sound that good. Burmester, must try harder. I like your system in the Pura Sangue, but in this, not so much. Secondly, there's quite a lot of glossy black plastic in this car, which I am not a fan of. You get it on all the vent surrounds, around the infotainment screen and down here in the center console. And while it does look okay, at least initially, over time, there's a high likelihood that it's gonna get scratched. I mean, look at this, that's already started to scratch, and this car's brand new. And then there's the infotainment screen, which is really responsive, except when it's not responsive, which does seem to happen from time to time. And that's annoying because most of this car's functions are controlled from inside the infotainment screen. One example being the nose lift feature, which lifts up the nose to let you go over speed bumps. You have to control that through the display. And if the display is not working, then you can't control the nose lift. Very awkward when you've got a line of traffic behind you and you can't go over a sleeping policeman. And then the last thing I'll moan about is the boot, which is tiny. It's about 200 litres and only enough space for about sort of one medium-sized case. I might be nitpicking here, but this is a Grand Tourer, a car designed to cover long distances. So it would have been nice to be able to carry some luggage with you on those long distance trips.
But the real issue with the 12-cylinder is that when you're driving it like this, like a normal car, you've got time to think.
About the outside world, about the future, about your home insurance policy and how you should probably find a better quote. And believe me, happiness does not that way lie. So there's really only one thing for it. Roof down, revs up, full concentration, live for the moment. The reason we love these big, naturally aspirated V12s is because they make you feel alive. They're animal. They breathe, they react to the touch. This isn't about man and machine. You exist as one. This is symbiosis. So the only thing to do, I guess, is just enjoy it. Not yearn for the past, not think about the future, just live for the moment. So if you'll excuse me, I am gonna focus on what's important. Just me and the 12C. I'm just gonna shut up now and appreciate.
Happiness, not in another place, but this place. Not in another hour, but this hour. Contentment isn't a prize at the end of the road. It's in the now. It's in the scream of an engine as it fills your ears. The cool breeze rushing against your skin. The impression of the road at your fingertips through the wheel. And the excitement in the pit of your stomach as you're carried on a surge of unrelenting power. True magic is in the here, in the now, in the 12-cylinder Spider.
Thanks for watching.